Hello people and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of the early history of man, the Table of Nations. If you missed the first part, go and check it out. But today we're doing the second part and it's the lineage of Japheth. So we're going to have a look at that, guys. Right, part 1, the lineage of Japheth, referred to Table 1 and Map 1. 1. Japheth. Literally, the progenitor of many nations, all the Indo-European peoples, in fact. It would seem surprising indeed if his name had gone unremembered among them. As it is, we find that the early Greeks worshipped him as Iapetos or Iapetus, whom they regarded as the son of heaven and earth, and the father of many nations. Likewise, in the ancient Sanskrit Vedas of India, he is remembered as Prajapati, the son and ostensible lord of creation. His name was further corrupted and assimilated into the Roman pantheon as Iupator, which eventually became that of Jupiter. None of these names are recognized as being of Greek, Indian, or Latin origin, but are rather mere corruptions of the Hebrew name of Japheth. Similarly, the early Saxon races perpetuated his name as Skeef, Sheaf or Shaph, and recorded his name in their early genealogies as the son of Noah, the forebear of their various peoples. Number 2, Gomer. He was the father of the Cimmerians, who settled originally on the shores of the Caspian Sea. They were later driven away by the Elamites, c. 49, at the time of the Babylonian exile. The Jews knew them as the tribes that dwelt in the uttermost parts of the north, Ezekiel 38:6. The Assyrians referred to them as the Gemeria. Esarhaddon 681-668 BC records his defeat at the Gemerai, whilst Ashurbanipal tells us of the Cimmerian invasion of Lydia, see Lud 52, in the days of the Lydian king Gugu around the year 660 BC, see map 1. Ashkenaz, number 3. His descendants settled originally in what is now Armenia, although in later Jewish traditions he was associated with his father Gomer with the Germanic races. Hence, Germanic Jews are still known as Ashkenazi, see figure 3. More immediately, perhaps the Assyrians tell us in their inscriptions of the Askuza, a tribe who allied themselves with the Mannai in a revolt during the 7th century BC, an incident that is also mentioned by Jeremiah 51:27. Indeed, it is in this statement that Jeremiah incidentally confirms that the identity of the Ashkenazim was the Askuza. This name, the Askuza of the Assyrian records, later became the Scythai or the Scythians of Herodotus. Other early sources confirm their place of settlement in what was later to become Pontus and Bithynia, where the peoples of Ashkenaz gave their name to the lake and harbour of Ascanius and to the district of Ascania. Somewhat more tentatively, perhaps, they are also said to have given their name to the Euxinus or Euxine Sea, the modern Black Sea, on whose shores they first settled. Josephus tells us that they were subsequently known to the Greeks as the Rhegians, see map 1. So we'll have a little look at the map here, guys, that were provided. And I think it's down here. So here we have all the names situated in the areas. Obviously, top left, Ruphath, the very top, Gomer, then you've got Tiras, Elisha, Javan, Dodanim, Kittim over in Cyprus, Tubal, Ashkenaz, Meshech, Magog, Madai. So number 4, Riphath. His descendants gave their name to the Riphaean Mountains, which early cosmographers thought of as constituting the then northern boundary of the world. More certainly, Pliny, Melo, and Silenus record the name of Riphath as the Riphae, or Riphaces, and the Piphatai, who were later known to the history as the Paphlagonians, the descent and identification of which is confirmed by Josephus, see map 1. Togarmah, his early descendants settled in Armenia. We know from certain Hittite documents that in the 14th century BC, the then region of Tegarama, which lay between Carchemish and Haran was sacked by the enemy from Isuwa, that is from beyond the Euphrates. Both Sargon II and Sennacherib mention the city of Tilgiramanu, the capital of Kamanu, which lay on the border of Tabal, c. 13. This city lay some 30 miles due east of present-day Malatya and was not finally destroyed until the year 695 BC. It is after this destruction of Telegaramanu that the descendants of Togarmah become lost in obscurity. In line with the Assyrian policy of the time, the survivors would have been uprooted and transported to other lands within the Assyrian Empire. See map 1. Number 6, Magog. His immediate descendants being known as the Magogites. Josephus tells us that they were later known to the Greeks as the Scythians. However, given the subsequent history of the peoples of Ashkenaz, see number 3, who are far more certainly identified as the later Scythians, Greek Scythai and Assyrian Askuza, it is much more likely that the early Magogites were assimilated into the peoples of Ashkenaz, thus making up merely a part of the Scythian hordes. See map 1. Again, guys, there's the map, map 1. Pause it and have a look. Number 7, the Madai. His descendants became the Madians, or Madians. They're better known as the Medes. The Assyrian recorded the name as Amada, the Greeks as Medai, and the Old Persian inscriptions speak of them as the Mada. The earliest reference to the Medes is found in secular records in the inscriptions of Shalmaneser III, king of Assyria, from 858 to 824 BC, in which he tells us that he invaded the lands for their famous and excellent horses. Both Strabo and Herodotus confirms the fact that the Medes were of Indo-European, that is, Japhetic extract, and we know also that their language was of this group. After 631 BC, the Medes joined with the children of Ashkenaz, that is, the Askuza or Scythians, and those of Homer, the Cimmerians, in order to throw off the Assyrian yoke. See map 1. Javan. The name of Javan's descendants appears in Assyrian documents as the Amanu, where we are told that they engaged the Syrians in a major naval battle during the reign of Sargon II, 721-705 BC. The Achaemenians' inscriptions also referred to them as the Yona. Homer wrote in the Iliad that the Iowans, the Hebrew Iowan, was the father of the Ionians, Greek Ions, a nation that was later famed in the Old World for the high quality of their yarn and bronze vessels. The Hebrews knew the Greek races as the Jevanim, the Iowanim. See map 1. Elisha. He was the ancestor of the Iolians, and his name constantly appears in the Greek history and mythology. 2 Greek cities were named after him, namely Elis and Elessus, after a district named Elas in his memory. There's also reason to believe that his name is perpetuated in the Greek paradise, the Elysian Fields. The Amarna tablets refer to his descendants as the Alicia, and also the Hittites knew them as the Elisa. The name also appears in the Ugaritic inscriptions. See map 1. Tarshish. The father of the peoples of Tarshish or Tartessus, whose descendants are thought by most to have settled in Spain. The Mediterranean Sea was once known as the Sea of Tarshish, and it is known that the Phoenicians built a class of sailing vessel called a ship of Tarshish. However, Phoenician inscriptions that have been found on Sardinia and which date to the 9th century BC mention Tarshish without, unfortunately, providing us with a positive identification of its geographical location. Josephus records the name as Tharsus and tells us that it used to be the name under which Cilicia was once known, the chief and noblest city of which was Tarsus. For various reasons, this is unlikely and the matter remains as yet unresolved. See map 1. Kittim, referred to in the old Phoenician inscriptions as the Kiti or the Kiti. His people settled on the island of Cyprus. They were to give their name to the ancient Cypriot city of Kition, that is modern Lanarka. This city was known to the Romans as Citium or Kitium. Number 12, Dodanum. This is the collective name of the peoples descended from Dodan, who were known to the Greeks as the Dardani, the Dardanians of Asia Minor. They settled initially around the area of Troy, whose coastal regions are known to this day as the Dardanelles. The original progenitor of this people was to be subsequently deified and worshipped as Jupiter Dodanius. Here we have a mingling of the names of Japheth and Dodan. The progenitors of this cult built the priestly city of Dodana as the chief seat of his worship. Egyptian records tell us that the Dardani were allies of the Hittites, c. 38, at the Battle of Kadesh, see map 1. Tubal, number 13. The descendants of Tubal first come to our notice in inscriptions of Tiglath-Pileser I, king of Assyria, 1100 BC. He refers to them as the Tabali, whose original area of settlement, that is, Tabal, was adjacent to that of Tegarama, that is, Togarma, c. 5. Subsequently, Josephus was to record the name of Tubal's descendants as the Thobalites, who later became the Iberes. Their land in Josephus' day was known to the Romans as Iberia and covered what is today the state of Georgia in the USSR. From here, having crossed the Caucasus mountain range, their people migrated due northeast, where they gave their old tribal name to the river Tobol, and hence to the modern-day city of Tobolsk. 14. Meshech. The descendants of Meshech are often spoken of in close association with those of Tubal, c. 13. The Assyrians, for example, mention the Tubal in Moscow, while Herodotus also writes of Tiberanoi and Moshkoi. A very much earlier reference to the posterity of Meshech is an inscription of 1200 BC, which tells us how they overran the Hittite kingdom, and in an inscription of Tiglath-Pileser I, 1100 BC, who tells us that in his own day, the Muscii were able to put an army of 20,000 men into the field. The activities of this same people are also subsequently reported by Tukulti Ninurta II and Ashurnasirpal II, Sargon, and Shalmaneser III, who refers to them as the Mushki. Josephus knew them as the Mosokeni, or Mosok, whom he says were known in his day as the Cappadocians, c. 34. He also points out that the chief city was known to his contemporaries as Mazaka, which is also once the name of the entire nation. Some later writers have pointed out that the name is preserved in the old tribal name of the Muscovites of Russia, who gave their name in turn to the city of Moscow. Such an identification, it must be said, is not all unlikely, especially when we consider the subsequent history of their historical close associates, the people of Tubal, and the fact that the name of the city is still rendered in the Russian tongue as Moskva, an exceedingly close, not to say identical relationship to the Assyrian Moscow. Intriguingly, we read in the book of Ezekiel 38:2 of Gog, the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh. Rosh is the name under which the modern Israelis know Russia. Meshech and Tubal, all these with the armies of Gomer, c2, Togarma, c5, Persia, modern Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya, are to come against the restored land of Israel in the last days. In view of this prophecy, the present-day political stance of these various nations is instructive and immensely sobering. See map 1. Number 15, Tiras, or Tyrus. Merenptah of Egypt, who reigned during the 13th century BC, provides us with what is so far our earliest reference to the peoples of Tiras, recording their name as the Tursha and referring to them as invaders from the north. The Greeks were later to know them as the Tyrsenoi, whom they feared as marauding pirates. Josephus identifies them as the tribe who were known to the Romans as Thracians, but to the Greeks as Thracians. History attests that they were indeed a most savage race, given over to a perpetual state of tipsy excess, as one authority put it. They are also described as ruddy and blue-eyed people. Tiras himself was worshipped by his descendants as the god Mars, but under his own name of Thuras. The river Athyras was also named after him, and it is not all unlikely that the Etruscans, a nation of hitherto mysterious origin, owe to him both their name and descent. The ancient city of Troy, appears to perpetuate his name, as also does the Taurus mountain range. See map 1. Okay, people, that leads us to part 2, the lineage of Ham, which will be the next video. We'll just quickly look at some of these maps and illustrations. So here we have, in this picture, figure 3, after a woodcut illustration depicting Ashkenazi Jewish rabbi of Prague from the year 1617. The Ashkenazi Jews are so called from the fact that after the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, they settled in Central and Eastern Europe, as did the descendants of the Ashkenaz centuries before. The Ashkenazi Jews were, of course, the majority of those Jews who were so wickedly slaughtered in the Nazi Holocaust. So there's a picture of Ashkenazi, apparently. Here's the map again, guys. You can see this is the east end of the Mediterranean. It was known as the sea of Tarshish. And you can see where all the names kind of fit in each nation, which I don't necessarily agree with. I'm not unconvinced, but I'm not totally agreeing that all these names come from that land. You can look at Beaumont's stuff too. He kind of does the same, but I think this is more rooted in evidence, where Beaumont can just make hypothesis through a word, where this goes a little bit deeper, I think. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll be looking at the lineages of Ham in the next part. So I'll see you then. Cheers. Have a good day.